The Mate, Chapter 4, Union with the Other, Hymn for the Wild Man, Manawee. If women want men to know them, really know them, they have to teach them some of the deep knowing. Some women say they are tired, already have done too much in this area. I humbly suggest they have been trying to teach a man who does not care to learn. Most men want to know, want to learn. When men show that willingness, then is the time to reveal things, not just because, but because another soul has asked. You will see. So, here are some of the things which will make it much easier for a man to understand, for him to meet a woman halfway. Here is a language, our language. There is no doubt that the wild man seeks his own down-under-the-earth bride. In tales among the Celts, there are the famous pairs of wild gods who love one another so. They often live under a lake where they are protectors of the underlife and the underworld. From Babylonian mythos, the cedar-thighed Inanna calls to her lover, the bull plough, Come cover me with your wildness. And even in modern times, even now, in the upper Midwest, the mother and father of God are still said to roll about in their spring bed, making thunder. Similarly, there is no one a wildish woman loves better than a mate who can be her equal. Yet, over and over, perhaps since the beginning of infinity, those who would be her mate are not quite sure they comprehend her true nature. What does a woman truly desire? This is an ancient question, a soulful riddle about the wildish and mysterious nature which all women possess. While the hag, in The Wife of Bath, croaked out the answer to this question was that women wish to have sovereignty over their own lives, and this is indeed an irrevocable fact, that there is another and equally powerful truth which answers this question as well. Here is a story that replies to the age-old question about women's true nature. Those who endeavour in the ways and means show in the story that shall be lover and mate to the wildish woman forever. Miss V.B. Washington gave me this version of the African-American story called Manawee. Manawee. There was a man who came to court two sisters who were twins, but the father said, "You may not have them in marriage until or unless you can guess their names." Manawee guessed and guessed, but he could not guess the names of the sisters. The young woman's father shook his head and sent Manawee away time after time. One day, Manawee took his little dog with him on a guessing visit, and the dog saw that one sister was prettier than the other, and the elder sister was sweeter than the other. Though neither sister possessed all virtues, the little dog liked them very much, for they gave him treats and smiled into his eyes. Manawee failed to guess the names of the young women again that day and trudged home. But the little dog ran back to the hut of the young woman. There he poked his ear under one of the side walls and heard the women giggling about how handsome and manly Manawee was. The sisters, as they spoke, called each other by name, and the little dog heard and ran as fast as he could back to his master to tell him. But on the way, a lion had left a big bone with meat on it near the path, and the tiny dog smelt it immediately, and without another thought, he veered off into the into the brush, dragging the bone. There he happily licked and snapped at the bone till all the flavour was gone. Oh, the tiny dog suddenly remembered the forgotten task, but unfortunately he had also forgotten the names of the young women as well. So back he ran to the twin sisters' hut a second time, and this time it was night, and the young women were oiling each other's arms and legs and readying themselves as though for a celebration. Again the little dog heard them call each other by name. He hopped up in the air in a fit of delight and was racing back down the path to the hut of Manawee, when from the brush came the smell of fresh nutmeg. Now, there was nothing the little dog loved more than nutmeg. So he took a quick turn off the path and sped to where a lovely kumquat pie sat cooling on a log. Well, soon the pie was all gone, and the little dog had lovely nutmeg breath. As he trotted home with a very full belly, he tried to think of the young women's names. But again he had forgotten them. So finally the little dog raced back to the sisters' hut again, and this time the sisters were readying themselves to be wed. "Oh no," thought the little dog, "there is hardly any time left." And when the sisters called each other by name, the little dog put the names into his mind and sped away, absolutely and resolutely determined that nothing would stop him from delivering the precious two names to Manawee right away. The little dog spied some small fresh kill on the trail, but ignored it and vaulted over it. The little dog for a moment thought he smelt a curl of nutmeg in the air, but he ignored it and ran toward home and his master. But the little dog did not plan for a black stranger to leap out of the bush and grab him by the neck and shake him so hard his tail almost fell off. For this is what happened. And all the while the stranger shouted, "Tell me those names. What are the names of the young women, so I may win them?" The little dog thought he himself would faint from the tight fist about his neck, but he fought bravely. He growled, he scratched, he kicked, and finally bit the giant stranger between the fingers, and the little dog's teeth stung like wasps. The stranger bellowed like a water buffalo, but the little dog would not let go. The stranger ran off into the bush with the little dog dangling from his hand. "Let go, let go, let go of me, little dog. I will let go of you," pleaded the black stranger. And the little dog snarled between its teeth, "Do not come back, or you won't see morning again." And so the stranger escaped into the bush, moaning as he ran, and the little dog proceeded to half hobble and half run down the path to Manawee. Even though his pelt was bloody and his jaws ached, the names of the young women were clear in his mind, and he limped up to the Manawee beaming. Manawee washed the little dog's wounds, and the little dog told him the whole story and the two names of the young women as well. Manawee raced back to the village of the young women with the little dog on his shoulders, riding high, the dog's ears flying like two horsetails. When Manawee reached the father with the names of his daughters, the twin sisters received Manawee completely dressed to journey with him, and they had been waiting for him all along. That is how Manawee won two of the most beautiful maidens of the Riverland, and all four, the sisters, Manawee, and the little dog, lived in peace together for a long time to come. Crick, crack, crack. Now that story is out. Crick, crun. Now, this story's done. The dual nature of women. With folk stories, as with dreams, we can understand their context subjectively. All the symbols portraying aspects of a single person's psyche, but we can also understand tales objectively as they ran to conditions and relations in the outer world. As they relate, to conditions. Here let us talk about the Manawee tale more in terms of relationship between a woman and her mate, keeping in mind that many times, as it is without, it is also within. This story unravels an old secret about women, and it is this. To win the wildish woman's heart, a mate would understand her natural duality through and through. Although we could understand the two women in the tale, ethnologically as brides-to-be in a polygamous culture, from an archetype perspective, this story speaks about the mystery of the two powerful feminine forces within a single woman. The Manawee story contains all the essential facts for being close to the wildish woman. Manawee, through his faithful dog, guesses the two names, the two natures of the feminine. He cannot win unless he solves the mystery, and he must use his own instinctive self, the dog self, to accomplish it. Anyone close to a wildish woman is in fact in the presence of two women, an outer being and an interior creatura, one who lives in the topside world and one who lives in the world not so easily seeable. The outer being lives by the light of the day and is easily observed. She is often pragmatic and acculturated and very human. The creatura, however, often travels to the surface from far away, often appearing and then as quickly disappearing, yet always leaving behind a feeling, something surprising, original and knowing. Understanding this dual nature in women sometimes causes men and even women themselves to close their eyes and hail heaven for help. The paradox of women's twins' nature is that when one side is more cool in feeling tone, the other side is more hot. When one side is more lingering and richly relationally, the other may be somewhat glacial. Often one side is more happy and elastic, while the other has a longing for I know not what. One may be sunny, while the other is bittersweet and wistful. These two women who are one are separate, but conjoined elements in which combine in thousands of ways. The power of two. While each side of a woman's nature represents a separate entity with different functions and discriminate knowledge, they must, like the brain, with its corpus callosum, have a knowing or a translation of one another and therefore function as a whole. If a woman hides sides or favors one side too much, she lives a very lopsided life, which does not give her access to her entire power. This is not good. It's necessary to develop both sides. There is much to be learnt about the strength of the two when we examine the symbol of twins. Throughout the world, since ancient times, twins have been thought to be endowed with supernatural powers. In some cultures, there is an entire discipline devoted to the balancing of the nature of twins, for they are thought to be two entities which share one soul. Even after their deaths, twins are fed, spoken to, given gifts and sacrifices. In various African and Carib communities, the symbol of twin sisters is said to possess juju, the mystical energy of the soul. Therefore, it is required that twins being impeccably taken care of lest a bad fate befell the entire community. One precaution from the hoodoo religion of Haiti requires that twins always be fed exactly the same measured portions in order to summarily allay all jealousy between them, but more so to prevent the wasting away of one of them, for if one dies, so shall the other. And the special soulfulness they bring to the community will be lost. Likewise, a woman has tremendous powers when the individual dual aspects are consciously recognized and beheld as a unit, held together rather than kept apart. The power of two is very strong, and neither side of the duality should be neglected. They need to be fed equally, for together they bring an uncanny power to the individual. I once heard a story from an old African-American man in the Mid-South. He came out of the alley as I was sitting amidst the graffiti of the inner city park. Some people would call him crazy, for he spoke to anyone and no one. He shuffled along with one finger held out as though to test the wind's direction. Cuentistas recognize such persons as having been touched by the gods, and we call them el bulto, the bundle, for which they carry a certain kind of ware and show it to anyone who will look. This particular kindly el bulto gave me a story about ancestral transmission. He called the story One Stick, Two Stick. This is the way of the old African kings, he whispered. In the story, an old man is dying and calls his people to his side. He gives a short, sturdy stick to each of his many offspring, wives, and relatives. Break the stick, he instructs them. With some effort, they all snap their sticks in half. This is how it is when a soul is alone without anyone. They can be easily broken. The old man next gives each of his kin another stick and says, "This is how I would like you to live after I pass. Put the sticks together in bundles of 2s and 3s. Now break these bundles in half." No one can break the sticks when there are 2 or more in a bundle, the old man smiles. We are strong when we stand with another soul. When we are with another, we cannot be broken. Likewise, when both sides of the dual nature are held close together in consciousness, they have tremendous power and cannot be broken. This is the nature of the psychic duality, of twinning, the two aspects of women's personality. By itself, more civilized self is fine, but somehow lonely. By itself, the wildish self is also fine, but wistful for relationship with the other. The loss of women's psychological, emotional, and spiritual powers comes from separating these two natures from one another and pretending one or the other no longer exists. This tale can be viewed as being about masculine duality as well as female duality. The Manawee man has his own dual nature, a human nature and a dog nature. His human nature, while sweet and loving, is not enough to win the courtship. It is his dog nature, his instinctual nature, that has the ability to creep near the wildish woman and with his keen listening hear their names. It is the dog self that learns to overcome superficial seductions and retain the most important knowings. It is Manawee's dog nature, which has sharp hearing and tenacity, the instincts to burrow under walls and to find, to chase, and to retrieve valuable ideas. Masculine forces can carry Bluebeard-like or murderous Mr. Fox sorts of energy and thereby attempt to demolish the dual structure of women. That sort of suitor cannot tolerate duality and is looking for perfection, for the one truth, the one immovable, unchangeable, feminina substantia, feminine substance, embodied in the one perfect woman. Ah, if you could meet this kind of person, run the other way as fast as you can. It is better to have a Manawee type lover, both within and without. He is a much better suitor, for he is intensely devoted to the idea of two, and the power of the two is acting as one integral entity. So Manawee wishes to touch this most ubiquitous but mysterious combination of soul life in women, and he has a sovereignty all of his own. Since he himself is a wildish natural man, he resonates to and has a taste for the wildish woman. Among the cumulative tribe of men in a woman's psyche, whose members Jungians call animus, there is also a Manawee-like attitude which finds the claims of a woman's duality, finding it valuable, courtable, and desirable, instead of devilish, ugly, to be disdained. Manawee, whether in the internal or external world, represents a fresh but faith-filled lover whose central desire is to name and understand the mysterious and numerous double in woman's nature. The power of nature. Naming a force, creature, person, or thing has several connotations. In cultures where names are chosen carefully for their magical or auspicious meanings, to know a person's true name means the life path and the soul attributes of that person. And the reason the true name is often kept secret is to protect the owner of the name so that he or she may grow into the power of the name, to shelter it so that no one will either denigrate it or distract from it, and so that one's spiritual authority can develop to its full proportions. In fairy tales and folk tales, there are several additional aspects to the name, and these are at work in the tale of Manawee. Although these are some tales where the protagonist searches for the names of a malevolent force in order to have power over it, more so, the questioning after name is in order to be able to summon that force or person, to call that person close to oneself and to have relationship with that person. The latter is the case in the Manawee story. He travels back and forth in sincere efforts to draw the power of his two close to him. He is interested in naming them not in order to seize their power, but instead to gain self-power equal to theirs. To know the names means to gain and retain consciousness about the dual nature. Wish as one may, and even with the use of one's might, one cannot have a relationship of depth without knowing the names. The guessing of the names of the dual nature of the two sisters is a difficult task initially for women as it is for men. But there need not be extensive angst about it. If we are interested to find the names, then we are on the right path. And what are the exact names of these two symbolic sisters in woman's psyche? The names of dualities, of course, vary from person to person, but they tend to be opposites of some sort. Like much of the natural world, they at first seem so vast as to be without pattern or repetition. But close observation of the dual nature, asking after it and hearing its answers, will soon reveal a pattern to it. A pattern that is vast, it is true, but has a stability like waves ebbing and flowing. Its high and low tides are predictable, its deeper currents are mappable. In the matter of guessing the names, to say a person's name is to make a wish or a blessing over them each time their name is called. We name these dual temperaments in ourselves in order to marry ourselves to them, In the naming, we discover personal and hidden meanings and the wildish beauty of womanliness, no matter the personalities of our oppositions. This naming and marrying is called, in human words, self-love. When it occurs between two individual persons, it is called loving another. Manawee guesses and guesses, but cannot guess the names of the twins with his mundane nature alone. The dog self acts in Manawee's service. Women often crave a mate who has this kind of endurance and the wit to continue trying to understand her deep nature. When she finds a mate of that substance, she will give lifelong loyalty and love. In the tale, the twins' father acts as the guardian of the mystical pair. He is symbolic of an actual intrapsychic feature which ensures the integrity of things, staying together and not being split apart. It is he who tests the worthiness, the righteousness of the suitor. It is good for women to have such a watcher. In this sense, it could be said that a healthy psyche tests new elements which apply to it for inclusion, that the psyche has an integrity about it, a screening process. A healthy psyche containing a fatherly watchman does not just admit any old thought, attitude, or person, only those which are sentient or striving to become so. The father of the two sisters says, "Wait until you have convinced me you are interested and really knowing about the true essence, the true names. You may not have, my daughters." The father is saying, you can't have understanding of a woman's mysteries just for the asking. You must do the work first. You must endure in pursuing this matter. You must divine yourself ever closer to the real truth of this female soul puzzle, this endeavor which is both a descent and a riddle. The tenacious dog nature. The little dog in the story shows exactly how psychic tenacity works. Dogs are the magicians of the universe. By their presence alone, they transform grumpy people into grinning people, sad people into less sad people. They engender relationship, as in the ancient Babylonian epic Gilgamesh, wherein Enkidu, the hairy animal, man, counterbalances Gilgamesh, the too rational king. The dog is one entire side of man's dualistic nature. He is the wood's nature, the one who can track, who knows by sensing what is what. The dog likes the sisters because they feed him and smile at him. The mystical feminine readily understands and accepts the instinctual nature of the dog. Dogs represent, among other things, he or she, who loves from the heart easily and long, who forgives effortlessly, can run long and fight, if necessary, to the death. The dog nature gives concrete clues to how a mate will win the heart of the dual sisters and the wildish woman. Manawee fails to guess the names again and trudges home, but the little dog runs back to the hut of the young women and listens till he hears their names. In the world of the archetypes, the dog's nature is both psychopomp, messenger between the topside world and the dark-lit world, and thetonic, that of the darker, of farther back regions of the psyche, the underworld in particular. It is this sensibility that a mate reaches into in order to understand duality. The dog is similar to the wolf, only a little more civilized, although, as we see in the rest of the story, not by much. This little dog is a psychopomp, is the instinctive psyche. It hears and sees differently than a human. It travels to levels the ego would never think of by itself. It hears words, instructions that the ego cannot hear, and it follows what it hears. Once at a science museum in San Francisco, I entered a chamber filled with microphones and speakers that simulated a dog's hearing When a palm tree waved in the wind, it sounded like Armageddon. When footsteps approached from far off, it was like 1,000,000 sacks of cornflakes being crushed right in my ear. The world of the dog is filled with constant, cataclysmic sound that we, as humans, do not register at all. But the little dog does. So the canon hears outside the range of human hearing. This mediumistic aspect of the instinctual psyche intuitively hears the deep work, the deep music, the deep mysteries of the feminine psyche. It is this nature which is able to know the wild nature in women, creeping seductive appetite. It is not by accident that men and women struggle to find the deeper sides of their natures and yet become distracted for any number of reasons, mostly pleasures of various sorts. Some become addicted to these pleasures and stay forever entangled there and never continue with their work. The little dog is also at first distracted by its appetites. Appetites are often charming little foragidos, robbers, dedicated to the theft of time and libido. Yours. Jung remarked that some control must be placed on human appetite. Otherwise, as you can see, one will stop for every bone hock in the road, every pie on a log. Mates who seek to name the dualities may, like the dog, lose their resolves as they are tempted off the path. This may especially occur if they are feral or starved creatures themselves. 2, they may lose their memory of what they were about. They may be tempted, attacked by something from their own unconscious which wishes to force itself upon women for exploitative gain, or wishes to entice women for its own pleasure, or in effort to banish a hunter's emptiness. On the way back to his master, the dog is distracted by a luscious bone, and in the process forgets the young women's names. This episode embodies a very common occurrence in deep psychic work of the distractions of appetite interfere with the primary process. Not a month goes by that I do not hear an analyst saying, "Well, I became distracted from my deep work because I became hot sexually and it took 7 days to quench the blaze." Or, "Because I decided this week was just the right time to give all my 500 house plants a haircut." Or, "Because I began 7 new creative ventures, had a great time, and then decided that none of them truly showed a real promise, and dropped them all off." So, you see, the bone on the road is waiting for all of us. It has the luscious stink a dog can hardly refuse. At worst, it's likely a favourite addiction, which one already has cost us. But even if we have failed time and time again, we must try again, till we can pass it by and go on with the primary work. The deep work is a lot like sexual arousal. It begins from ground zero, accelerates in plateaus, becomes sustained and intense. If the plateaus are interrupted harshly, imagine a loud and unexpected noise, you must begin all over again. There's a similar arousal tension in working with the archetypal layer of the psyche. If the tension is interrupted, one has to start nearly from scratch. So there are many bones on the road, juicy, nice, interesting, savagely exciting bones, but somehow they cause us to be carried off into amnesia, to not only forget where we are in the work, but to forget what the work is at all. The Quran wisely advises, "You will be called into account for all the permitted pleasures in life you did not enjoy while on earth." However, too much or even a little bit of a good thing at the wrong time can cause a gross loss of consciousness. Then, instead of a sudden rush of wisdom, we walk about like an absent-minded professor muttering, Now, where was I? It takes weeks, sometimes months, to recover from these destructions of ours. In the story, the dog runs back to the sister's hut again, hears their names and races off once more. This canid has the right instinct to try again and again. But, there's a kumquat pie which distracts him, and he forgets the names again. Another aspect of appetite has assaulted the creature and again drawn him from his task. And although his gut is satisfied, the soul's work is not. We begin to understand that this process of remaining conscious, and particularly not giving into the distracted appetites while trying illicit psychic connection, is a long process, and one that is difficult to hold on to. We see the wily little dog trying his damnedest, yet it is a long way from the deep archetypal unconscious back to the conscious mind. It's a long way down to the names and a long way back to the surface again. Holding knowledge and consciousness is hard when there are snares along the path. The kumquat pie and the bone represent distracting seductions that are in their own way delicious. In other words, there are elements of everyone's psyches that are devious, trickerish, and scrumptious. These elements are anti-consciousness. They thrive by keeping things dark and exciting. Sometimes it's hard to remind ourselves that we are holding out for excitement of the light. The dog is the light bringer. He is trying to bring up conscious connections to the mystical twin nature. Something rhythmically attempts to prevent this, something that is unseen, for most assuredly is the positioner of bones and the fixer of pies. No doubt this is the dark stranger, another version of the natural predator of the psyche which opposes consciousness. Because of this natural occurring opposer in the psyche, all persons, even the most healthy psyche, is susceptible to losing its place. Remembering the real task and reminding ourselves over and over in practically mantra fashion will bring us back to consciousness. Achieving fierceness. The little dog learns the names of the women one more time and races back to his master. He ignores the feast on the road and the enticing smells from the bush. Here we see the consciousness of the psyche rising. The instinctive psyche has learned to curb itself, prioritize and focus. It refuses to be diverted. It is now intent. But from nowhere, a dark thing suddenly jumps out at the little dog. The black stranger shakes the dog and shouts, Tell me those names. What are the names of the young women, so that I may win them? The black stranger does not care for duality or the finer points of the psyche. To him, the feminine is a possession to be won and nothing more. The black stranger can be personified by a real person in the outer world or a negative complex within. It does not matter which, the devastating effect is the same. The time the dog engages in unrestrained battle, whether male or female, this occurs in outer life, when an incident, a slip of words, an odd thing of some sort, jumps out and tries to make us forget who we are. There is always something in the psyche that tries to rob us of the names. There are many name robbers in the outer world also. In the story, the little dog fights for its life. Sometimes the only way we learn to hold on to our deeper knowledge is because a stranger jumps out. Then we are forced to fight for what we find. Dear, fight to be serious about what we are about. Fight to get past our superficial spiritual motives, which Robert Bly calls the desire to feel groovy. Fight to hold on to the deeper knowledge. Fight to finish what we have begun. The little dog fights to keep the names and thus conquers the repetitive slide of unconsciousness. Once the battle is fought, amazingly, the dog has not lost the names, for that is what they were fighting over. Knowledge about the wild feminine. Whoever passes it has a power equal to that of the woman herself. The dog has fought to give his power to the worthy man, Manawee. He has fought to keep his power from an aspect of ancient human nature that would misuse it. The giving of power into the right hands is as important as the finding of the names. The heroic dog gives the names to Manawee, who presents them to the young woman's father. The young women are ready to go away with Manawee. They have all along been waiting for Manawee to discover and retain conscious knowing of their intrinsic nature. So we see that two things which prevent progress in these matters are the distractions of one's appetite and the darker stranger, this sometimes being the inner oppressor within the psyche and sometimes a person or situation in the outer world. Regardless, each traveller knows intimately how to defeat these looters and marauders, keep hold of the names, and name them all. The interior woman. Sometimes women become tired and cranky while waiting for their mates to understand them. The woman says, "Why can't they know what I think, what I want?" Women become fatigued and from asking this question. Yet there is a solution to this dilemma, a solution which is efficient and effective. If a woman wants a mate who is responsive in this way, she will reveal to him the secret of woman's duality. She will tell him about the interior woman, one who, added to herself, makes two. She does this by teaching her mate to ask two deceptively simple questions that will make her feel seen, heard, and known. The first question is this: what do you want? Almost everyone asks some version of this, just as a matter of course. But there is yet one more essential question, and that is, what does your deeper self desire? If one overlooks a woman's dual nature and takes a woman at face value, one is in for a long surprise. For when the woman's wildish nature rises from her depths and begins to assert herself, she often has interests, feelings, and ideas which are quite different from those she expressed before. To securely weave a relationship, a woman will ask the same two questions of her mate. As a woman, we learn to poll both sides of our nature and that of others as well. From the information we receive reciprocally from both sides, and we can very clearly determine what is valued most and how to respond accordingly. When a woman consults her own dual nature, she is in the process of looking, canvassing, taking soundings of material that is beyond consciousness, and therefore often astonishing in content and process, the most often very valuable, and most often very, very valuable. To love a woman, the mate must also love her wildish nature. If she takes a mate who cannot or will not love his other side, she shall surely in some way be dismantled and be left to limp about unrepaired. So men, as much as women, must name their dual natures. The most valued lover, the most valuable parent, the most valued friend, the most valuable wilder man is the one who wishes to learn. Those who are not delighted by learning, those who cannot be enticed into new ideas or experiences, cannot develop past the road post they rest at now. If there is but one force which feeds the root of pain, it is the refusal to learn beyond this moment. We know that the creature, wild man, is seeking his own earthly woman. Afeared or not, it is an act of deeper love to allow oneself to be stirred by the wildish soul of another. In a world where humans are so afraid of losing, there are far too many protective walls against being dissolved in the numinosity of another human soul. The mate for the wildish woman is the one who has a soulful tenacity and endurance, one who can send his own instinctual nature to peek under the tent of a woman's soul life and comprehend what he sees and hears there. The good match is the man who keeps returning to try to understand, who does not let himself be deterred. So, the wildish task of the man is to find her true names and not to misuse that knowledge to seize power over her, but rather to apprehend and comprehend the numinous substance from which she is made, to let it wash over him, amaze him, shock him, even spook him, and to stay with it, and to sing out her names over there. It will make her eyes shine. It will make his eyes shine. But, lest one rest too soon, there is yet another aspect to naming the dualities, a more fearsome one yet, but one essential to all lovers. While one side of a woman's dual nature might be called life, life's twin sister is a force named death. The force called death is one of two magnetic forks of the wild. If one learns to name the dualities, one will eventually bump up against the bald skull of the death nature. They say only heroes can stand it. Certainly, the wildish man can stand it. Absolutely, the wildish woman can stand it. They are, in fact, wholly transformed by it. So now, please meet the skeleton woman.